Hey guys, Lee Donna here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. I have been wanting to cover this topic for a while now, but it has been difficult to rein in my thoughts and put them into any kind of concise format because imposter syndrome encompasses so many thought patterns. Therefore, naturally, my mind bounces all over the place. And every time I try to sit down and write out the script, I end up feeling like I'm in a therapy session, which really isn't helpful to you guys and defeats the whole point of me even wanting to record this video. What's interesting about my thoughts on this topic is that up until recently, I didn't know I suffered from imposter syndrome. I wanted to cover the topic solely because you hear about it everywhere, not only in creative circles, but in every imaginable sphere of life. Doctors, lawyers, astronauts, husbands, wives, sons, daughters. There's no title a person can hold that makes them impervious to the effects of imposter syndrome. Why then did I think I wasn't affected by it? Simply put, whenever I hear people speak about imposter syndrome, they use the word fraud. Over and over, people say they feel like frauds. And when they elaborate, what I've always heard is that they are comparing themselves to other people and deciding they are not as good as those people. This is where my first disconnect came in. I wholeheartedly am against all forms of comparison. People are individual and unique, and in every manner of comparison where we try to deem one person as better than another, there's no room allowing for the appreciation of individuality. This is my first long trail of thought that takes me away from specifically addressing imposter syndrome because I could record a whole episode about the harm we do to other humans when we decide success is only achieved or defined one way. Back when I was fresh out of high school and working in a local bank, I met a man who could not read or write, but he was a master craftsman. He could build and create without the aid of math skills that would be learned in school. I have no idea how he accomplished the feats that he did, but for many reasons, this man had an impact on my life, and I've never forgotten him. Measured by certain standards and in the eyes of every person who dares to think that they are better than someone else because they have high test scores or a piece of paper declaring them to be titled as somebody, this man isn't simply undervalued, but devalued. I find that to be a great travesty. People should be inspired by this man, not sitting on their rumps passing judgment. People should want to partner with him, come alongside this man and lift him up, help him, teach him, learn from him. He has value. He has the ability to teach. Most of all, he has a heart, a soul, and a tenacity unmatched by the masses. He's the type of hardworking, obstacle overcoming human this world needs more of. I count him as a success, a person to be celebrated for what he can do, not one to ridicule for what he can't. When it comes to competitiveness and the way people measure themselves by what they perceive another person to be, it's a pendulum that can also swing dangerously in the opposite direction, causing intimidation, fear, and feelings of inadequacy. So, first of all, perceptions are almost always wrong. What you think and feel about another person, especially someone you only know on a surface level, is an opinion filtered through you. This means your perception of them is a reflection of you, not them. Secondly, most competition, whether it be sports, trivia, test scores, it's all a snapshot of a moment in time. It calculates who was best on that day in that moment, and out of the select group of people participating in whatever the competition happens to be. Yes, we can celebrate those achievements, but I know brilliant people who cannot take a written test to save their lives. On paper, they don't seem as brilliant as they truly are. I know my voice keeps cracking, guys. I've tried to clear it up, lozenges. I've had like 2 massive bottles of water, and it's just what is happening today. So I'm going to keep recording because I've stopped and started about 15 times already, and that it really just makes me exhausted when I have to do that. So I'm just going to keep going. I could also keep going with examples like the ones that I just gave, but the point is that I never counted myself as afflicted by imposter syndrome because I'm not a person prone to valuing people based on their accolades alone. I am more than happy to celebrate all of your accomplishments. But what I care about above all of that is who you are inside. Do you have a good soul? Because evil people can win awards and earn degrees. So, as for testing ourselves in order to win a title or some sort of award, if that is your thing, go for it. If you are an author and you want to hit the New York Times bestseller list, it's a pay to play scenario, and the blueprint on how to stack ads and promos is readily available. That's why so many authors have that title. They studied what it takes to get there and implemented a plan. There's no devaluing their efforts. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, go after it with the same gusto that professional athletes have. They work really hard, not only to reach the pro level, but afterward, they work extremely hard to stay there. They sacrifice a lot because they know whatever they've won or accomplished in the past was nothing more than a snapshot of which competitor was best in that singular moment in time. If they want to be the best again, they have to put in an extreme amount of effort and time preparing for the next test of their abilities. There was a study or a poll of sorts submitted to Olympic athletes some years back, and it's been so long since I heard about it. I don't recall all the specifics, but basically, a question was asked to the effect of if you could take a pill that would guarantee you win a gold medal in the next Olympic Games, said pill also guaranteeing that you die within 5 years, would you take the pill? Almost every Olympian said yes. That is beyond disturbing. When I heard that report, I was absolutely gobsmacked. In my eyes, life isn't only precious and fleeting, but it's an N equals one experiment. I work a lot, most days, easily 18 hours when it comes to adding up all the many ventures I'm juggling. That means I sacrifice a lot, but not for accolades, which is again where I felt separated from imposter syndrome. Personally, I couldn't care less if I ever win anything. I don't seek out titles, competitions, and whether or not people know my name has zero impact on my life. What speaks to me and motivates me to keep working is having a life full of experiences, trying new things, reflecting back on my life and seeing personal growth, being willing to course correct when necessary. I am not afraid to fail, to say I'm sorry. And if you want to know my faults, I'm happy to list those one by one. This is where I fall down the pit of treating this video like a therapy session because even as I'm recording, I don't know where the line is where giving you a glimpse of my mental state goes from being helpful to detrimental to the point I'm trying to get across. Suffice it to say, I didn't count myself as not afflicted by imposter syndrome because I'm eaten up with confidence. In fact, quite the opposite. Most of us are our own worst critics. And when you are deeply introspective the way I am, you tend to really go hard on the negativity. As my husband says, I can hear nice words 1,000 times and never believe them, but a single cruel one, I believe it the first time, every time. Now, If I have any superpower whatsoever, it's that for as sensitive and empathetic to a fault as I am, I do have thick skin. There are very few people whose opinions of me as a person would break me if they thought ill of me. These are not the only people I love and value, because love is something that I can give freely without having any expectation of being loved in return. In fact, the feeling of not being worthy, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, keeps me from expecting anyone to care about me ever. So when I say I have thick skin, I'm not talking about a blasé attitude of unaffectedness, because usually when people say they don't care what anyone thinks, they're covering for the fact that they're actually very hurt by what people say. So what I'm talking about here is a lesson I learned when I was so young that it feels like I came out of the womb knowing that there is not a single thing I can ever do that will come without ridicule. You can save an infant from the jaws of a lion, and people will scream at you because you didn't do it fast enough or right enough, or because in saving the human life, you harmed the lion. People are cruel and they will wag their tongues no matter what. It's because of this lesson that I developed into the person I am today, caring about people regardless of whether or not they care about me, and jumping off of figurative cliffs in pursuit of anything that I want to try. If I crash and burn, so be it. People can laugh, wag their tongues, say hurtful things, and be downright nasty human beings, because even if I don't take a figurative leap, people are still going to be nasty little creatures. I will also add something here that I didn't write in my script, but I want to be clear that um, while it is true that people are nasty little creatures, also inside of our own heads, we are the nasty little creatures, and we direct that at ourselves. And so we think, oh, if I do X, people are going to say Y, but that's just our inner dialogue talking, and it isn't a reality. Getting back to my script, I know we live in a society where we've bred into people this idea that it's cool to be mean, nasty, unfiltered, sarcastic, to join with people to discuss what we hate and what's negative. But if you are talking to me, tell me what you like. Tell me what inspires you, because that is what inspires me. I don't want my life force to be drained. I want to build it up so that I can then pour it out. This is why I am recording a video on imposter syndrome. Our own minds know no bounds when it comes to stopping us from living our dreams, from telling us bad things about ourselves, to turning us into jaded and flippant critics of everyone and everything. Before I realized that I too suffer from imposter syndrome, I wanted to record this video because so many people I care about have ambitions, but I never see them taking even a single step toward achieving whatever it is they want. Sometimes I see them gathering inspiration and even stuff that is going to clutter up their house, still without ever taking an intentional step that leads them to the precipice. They get stuck in their heads somewhere between having a dream and actually following through with the necessary steps to get that dream out of their head. I thought maybe it would be helpful to remind all of us that no one is without negative thoughts. The only difference is whether or not we're willing to move forward in spite of ourselves, something that is easier said than done. But another thing I learned is that every single thing we do has a payout, even bad attitudes, excuses, and all the negative thoughts. If we are participating in a behavior, this includes getting stuck in our heads and only listening to our inner dialogue, which is usually pretty negative. It is gaining us something. It might not be a good something, but if we're not getting something out of our behavior, we don't do it. For me, I use that understanding as a tool to push myself aside when it's necessary. Another thing that helps in those times of doubt and darkness is having very clear intentions. I do set goals, but those are not as important to me as my overall purpose. Again, everything we do has a payout, so we have to be clear as to what it is we're attempting to achieve, the big picture, the why. My reason for publishing books and podcasts alike is tied to legacy. I want to leave something of myself behind for my family. I've lost many people that I love dearly, and I wish I had a collection of items that belong to them, not random or physical things they might have owned, but pieces that give me glimpses of their soul, something that was meaningful to them. While I don't expect anyone to want that when it comes to me, I've still set an intention to leave myself raw and vulnerable. And when I'm gone, my family can take the collection of work I've left behind and do with it as they please. I do hope that maybe one day someone, possibly a great grandchild, will come across a book or a video of mine and be inspired to take their own leap of faith. But whether or not everything I leave behind is doomed to be scrapped or not, I've set my intentions, and every move I make is filtered through that big picture of my intention. If you're the opposite of me and you are a competitive person, so winning an award or a medal, being a household name, being deemed as one of the greatest people to ever live is what fires you up, then write that down. Don't lie and say you're not in it for the accolades or the money or any other thing that you feel like someone else will look down on you for, because the air they are breathing right now is theirs. If they want to spend it talking about you, that has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. The air you are breathing is yours. Do something with it that is meaningful to you. Be honest about your intentions and what you desire, because distractions will come, shiny new objects here and there, opportunities that might be great in the short term, but will take you away from your long-term goals, opportunities that will serve your long-term goals, but you miss them because you are afraid, self-conscious, and filled with self-doubt. The definition of imposter syndrome is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Listen to that again. The persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Imposter syndrome is not real in terms of being a tangible thing. It is a belief, something conjured in our own minds. Trains, planes, and automobiles were also conjured in the mind. Then the people with those dreams stepped over the anxiety of their complicated inner dialogue and jumped into the deep end. There were tons of failures, ridicule, naysayers, but look at the world around us. Look at what the dreams of a few did for the world. I am anti-destroying the earth to build more things that we do not need, but I still marvel at what people can accomplish when they set their mind to the task instead of setting it to anxiety and criticism. Over 20 years ago, I was in a restaurant with my husband, and there was some sort of a gadget game machine thing where you were supposed to hold on to this handle and it would read your mood or something like that. And it had this meter that was from calm, cool, and collected all the way up to frazzled and anxiety ridden. Joe told me not to touch it because if I did, I would break it. He wasn't wrong. I had anxiety like a house on fire long before I ever heard the word anxiety. But what's funny is that during this time in my life, people would come to me for advice because in their eyes, I was always so put together and calm. Even when I told them I was far from that, they would dismiss me, acting as if their perception of me was correct and that I was somehow just being modest. I'm bringing this up as an example of why perceptions can't be trusted and to say that we are so much more than our own thoughts. I know how hard it is to pull up out of the darkness, and the older I get, I feel the weight of depression so much heavier than anxiety. But I just want you to know that you are worth the struggle. Whatever negative things you are berating yourself with and beating yourself over the head with, acknowledge them, write them down. And then next month, when the darkness creeps back in, look at what you wrote down. It's probably along the same lines of thinking. Recognize those patterns for what they are, and then look at the goals you wrote down, your intention. What you achieve in this life is a result of your own efforts. If you do nothing, you gain nothing. Do not let misguided thoughts destroy you. And I assure you, those negative thoughts you're having are misguided. So much of what we think about ourselves comes from or came from other people. This could be something you saw on television, something you read on social media, something that was said to you when you were a child, things that happened to you during your formidable years of life. And these negative thought patterns will stick with us. And even when we don't realize it, we fall victim to letting those things control us. That's why we turn away compliments, hear only negativity, and consider ourselves imposters. To me, no matter what we want to call it, every negative emotion and thought that we have is a manifestation of fear. We are afraid to fail, to be embarrassed, to be vulnerable, to be less than, to be rejected. As artists and creatives, which I assume many of you are if you're watching this video, you've poured yourself into your work. The thought of putting your heart and soul in front of the world to be judged is terrifying. You also appreciate the work of others and stand in awe of them. And that makes it easy to slip down that slope into comparisonville. But loving and appreciating someone else's work, even more than your own, doesn't make you less than, nor do the harsh words of people who fancy themselves worthy of criticizing. So put down your measuring sticks, because if the only way you are ever allowed to do something is by being perfect at it straight out of the gate, then we're done. Progress stops. We will never learn new ways to do things, know what we like, or even what can be done better if we are never allowed to try. Can you imagine someone telling the NBA they're not allowed to practice anymore? Can you imagine any NBA player choosing not to practice anymore? It's absurd. So we have to get out of our own heads, get out of our own ways, and understand that we are all a work in progress. I am not a public speaker, nor am I quick-witted or even remotely entertaining. Most of the time, I'm not even sure I have anything important to say. I also have such a low voice that I usually choose not to speak in social settings because no one is going to hear me anyway. Yet, I decided to start not one, but two YouTube channels, one of them being a podcast. I am out of my depth at every single turn, and the podcast isn't remotely close to being what I want it to be. However, after going through the stress of beginning to publish my books, my first ones being stories I never thought would ever be seen by anyone, these YouTube channels began to press on my soul. This book channel is here for random thoughts, such as what I'm spilling out in this video today. If my journey as a writer can help one single person, it's all worth it. I'll probably never know if I had any impact, and I'm fine with that because my payout isn't manifested by external gratifications. I'm simply answering the call of what I feel in my soul. What is it that your soul wants? Think about that and then answer yourself honestly, because lying to yourself about what you want isn't going to work. It's only going to waste your time and cause problems for you down the road. Whatever skill sets we may or may not possess, for me personally, I believe it's better to try and fail than never try at all. And not to diverge off topic again, but I actually don't subscribe to the idea of failure. I think it's abstract. You might figure out 1,000 ways not to do something, but it's practice that makes perfect, which then branches off into another topic of how perfection is also an abstract concept. If I'm speaking to my great great grandchild right now, what I want them to know is that you do not have to be anyone's idea of perfect, great, or the best. All you ever have to be is yourself. What seems like a failure today is only a stepping stone in the journey of your life. Not a single person has ever achieved anything without walking a rocky path. I don't care who you idolize and how easy you think they have it. They are where they are today, not because of their success, but because of what they see as their failures. In the definition of imposter syndrome, it goes on to say imposter feelings represent a conflict between your own self-perception and the way others perceive you. Even as others praise your talents, you write off your success to timing and good luck. You don't believe you earned their praise on your own merits, and you fear others will eventually realize the same thing. The first book I ever published happens to also be the first book I ever wrote. It's okay, but not great. It can be better, especially if I put it back the way I originally wrote it, which I'm going to do eventually and republish the book as an updated version. But in the over 2 years since the book has been released, it's still being read today and by people who love it. I get messages from time to time, and I'm as gobsmacked by those as when I heard about the Olympians wanting to throw away their lives just to go down in history as having won a gold medal. Again, life is one big ball of subjective ideas. One man's failure is another man's success. So do the things that matter to you, the things that are important in the context of your life. Write down those aspirations and start formulating a plan on how to achieve every goal inside of your head, no matter how far-fetched you think it is, and certainly in spite of how out of your league others might think it is. No matter how today goes, get up tomorrow with renewed purpose. Be ready to grow, to be tenacious, to go after what might feel like an unattainable goal. The bar is probably closer than you think, and even if it isn't, you are still worthy of crossing it. You are deserving. I want to conclude by telling you about a couple of people some of you will know. Pauline Hoover, an author who has now sold more copies of her books than copies of the Bible have been sold, said in an interview with, I believe it was the New York Times, that she feels like an imposter. She reads other people's books and wishes she could write the way that they do. Yet it's her work that's gaining acclaim, not theirs. Whether or not she's a better writer than anyone else is completely subject to the preference of the reader. What Pauline did was stay the course that she set, and she's now seeing the fruit of her labor. Agatha Christie, the beloved English mystery writer, was tasked with writing a play for Queen Mary. We know this play today as The Mousetrap, and it's the longest running play in the world, despite Christie herself saying, I give it 8 months. Agatha was invited to the premiere of this play, so she got all dressed up, but when she arrived, the doorman asked her for a ticket. She didn't have one, so she scurried away and wandered around the halls of the theater for half an hour. Someone finally recognized her and asked what she was doing. She told them she didn't have a ticket. They laughed at her, surely, and said, "Why didn't you just tell the doorman who you are?" She was, after all, the honored guest. Agatha responded, "I was scared. I felt like a fraud." There is no level of success that will change your inner dialogue. The only options you have are to let your thoughts consume you and never fulfill any of your heart's desires, or to set the negativity aside long enough to get the work done. If we want a shot at breaking these mental cycles, we have to do the hard things. We may never believe that any recognition we earn isn't sympathy or pity. We might call it chance and believe the mistakes we make are evidence of our lack of ability, intelligence, and value. But if we are moving forward, putting in the work, and realizing our dreams, those thoughts can swirl about all they want. It's fine to talk about them, to acknowledge them, and to be honest with not only ourselves, but others. You can be the most perceptive person in the world and still have absolutely no idea what someone else is dealing with, what they might find value in. Every step you take can be a learning experience. You only have to be willing to take that step. That's why I leap. I would chicken out if I only took one step at a time, but you guys are braver than I am. So do it step by step. You don't have to jump, and drop me a line to let me know what it is that you are working on, what your goals are, where you are headed in this life. My email is leedawnabooks@gmail.com. If you would like to say your dreams and ambitions out loud, because sometimes that forces you to actually get up and do the work, leave your comment below. Maybe the reason this video exists is because someone in the comments is the one who's meant to inspire others. One can never know. Whatever your gut is telling you, whatever you feel in your heart and your soul, follow that lead. Also, the History Chicks podcast has a great episode on Agatha Christie. I will link to it in the show notes. Give it a listen and be brave. Take care, and I will see you next time.